misguidance if you do not understand the Quran properly. That's why it's very important that when we read Quran, we are reading Quran for reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the power of the Quran, where is the power of the Quran? Is it in hanging it on the walls? Is it wearing it around your neck? Where is the power of the Quran? Yes? Yeah, but how in your heart is there is powerful, but how does it become so powerful?
When you understand the Quran.
Very good, mashallah. You understand it, and then when you understand it, what do?
You use the knowledge.
You use the knowledge. It becomes knowledge. It's not just information. See how many Qurans we have here, mashallah. Also, but how many of these Qurans are being put to use? And once Imam Ahmad, famous hadith scholar, one person came to him and they said to him, this young boy, we have another boy who has memorized the Quran. So he said, okay, so we have just another copy of the Quran. Meaning that when somebody memorizes the Quran, you just get another copy of the Quran. But what's important is not that you memorize the Quran only, but your Quran becomes your actions. Because the Prophet ﷺ was what? He was a walking Quran. Surprised. He was a walking Quran means that he was living the Quran. It was like a Quran walking. Okay, so all the actions, all what the Quran was telling him, he was showing it. He was acting the Quran. Okay, so you read the Quran. If you read, we have the Quran with us, and we don't practice the Quran, then the Quran is not going to be of benefit to us.
Sorry, we're going to stop for a while just to listen to Azan, please.
Okay, they forget that they have to be humble, have to follow the example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So peace for Prophet, and we have to learn the akhlaq of the Prophet. We have to learn how generous he was, how patient he was, how forgiving he was. Once a Jewish man wanted to... What is the book of the Jews? What's it called? Does anybody know? Torah, well done. So the Jews, they have the book of the Torah, and in the Torah it says certain things about a prophet. There will come a prophet. So even when Isa alayhi salam came, or before Isa, Yahya, what was the relationship of Yahya to Isa? Was he his brother, his uncle, his grandson? What was his relationship? Does anybody know? MashaAllah, is it only you that knows the answers?
I think he was his great-grandfather.
No. It's a good try though. Yes, you have an answer though? Yeah? Yeah? Cousin, MashaAllah. If we had some sweets, we would have given you a present. He was his cousin. Okay, so they existed at the same time. When the Jews came, maternal cousin means that he was their sisters, their mothers, the mother of Isa and the mother of Yahya were sisters. Okay, so when the Jews came to Yahya and they saw Yahya, who was a prophet as well, they asked him 3 questions. Okay, they said to him, "Are you Elijah?" Meaning, are you Ilyas? He said, "No, I'm not." They said to him, "Are you the Messiah? Are you the Messiah, Christ?" He said, "No, I'm not." Then they said to him, "Are you the Prophet?" And he said, "No, I'm not." They asked him 3 questions. They were expecting these 3. They were expecting Ilyas, Elijah to come back. They were expecting the Messiah, who is Isa, and they were expecting the Prophet. So they knew that these 3 will come. They knew that there's a prophet coming, and they have a description of the prophet that's going to come. So in the book, they found written that the prophet, when he comes, whenever you try to make him angry, he just becomes more calm and forgiving and relaxed. So one of these Jews, he said, "I wanted to test that in the prophet." So he went to the prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he said to him, "Oh Muhammad, you know all these people, there's a lot of people becoming Muslims. And you need to help them, you need to give them money to support them because they are poor. And you don't have a lot of money. If you want, I can give you a loan. I can give you some money, I can give you a loan, a dain, and then you can keep it for a month and then pay it back to me. Okay? Interest-free loan because interest is haram. Alright? So the Prophet ﷺ said, yes, well that's fine, thank you. So he gave him the loan, it was food to give and distribute. He took it, and then that Jewish man went away. But then he came back some days later, before the agreed time had finished. They agreed on a date to give the money back. So he came to him before the date had finished. And while the Prophet ﷺ was sitting with all the Sahaba, the Jewish man, he stood at the door and he said, "Oh Muhammad, you're such a bad person in regards to debt and money. I gave you money and you didn't give me my debt back." Okay? What was he wanting to do? He's wanting to anger the Prophet. He wants to make him angry. Okay? He wants to try and see how the Prophet would react. He said, "Oh Muhammad, you haven't paid my money back." So the Prophet ﷺ was shocked by this because he wasn't expecting the guy to ask the money back now. Still have some more days. So at that time, Omer was sitting next to the Prophet ﷺ. And you know Omer, very, very strict man, very, very tough man. What did the Prophet ﷺ say about Omer with regards to the shaitan?
If there was another prophet, then Omer would be the person after him.
Yes, that's one thing that he said. But with regards to the shaitan, what did he say? Does anybody know? He said, "Ya Omer, if you were walking down a path, then the shaitan would not walk in that same path. He would want to go walk in a different path. He doesn't want to walk in the same path as Omer. Very scared of Omer. It's great because of his iman and belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Omer, when he saw that Jew talking to the Prophet ﷺ, he opened up his eyes and was really angry with that Jew. He was going to go and beat him up because of how he was talking to the Prophet ﷺ. And the Jewish guy was thinking, "Oh, what have I done here? Why have I said this? What trouble?" But instead the Prophet ﷺ said, "Omar, calm down. Take that Jewish man, his name was Zayd al-Musa'na, take him and give him back his money. Give him his debt back that he wants." So Omar goes and takes that Jewish man and gives him back his money. And then that he confesses. He says, "Look Omar, I wasn't really trying to anger them, but I wanted to see the response because I wanted to see the sign which we have in the Torah, which says that the Prophet, the more you anger him, the more he becomes forbearing, halim. And I have seen it today. So ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah." And he became a Muslim because he saw that the Torah was telling the truth, that this is the Prophet that will come. The fourth thing that I think we need to talk about is increase your knowledge. Is for increasing your knowledge. Because as Muslims, we hold such a great aspect of knowledge, ilm, learning. And we have to be continuously learning. Because we are learning the moment that we are born, we are learning and we're taking the information, but we have to carry on learning. We never stop learning. And the more you learn, the higher you'll rise. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, يَرْفَعُ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah will raise those who have iman of you and those who have been given knowledge, acquired knowledge, He will raise them levels. So the more you learn, the more you become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it's important to learn knowledge and not information. What's the difference between information and knowledge?
Is it because, for example, because information they just give to you, and knowledge you can just find it out yourself, and then you can
horrible.
Not quite, but well done, we'll try. And you know the difference between information and knowledge.
Is knowledge like what you know, and information is what like people give to you?
No, not quite. This is a hard one. I'd be surprised if you knew it. But
Information is basically a piece of script which someone gives to you
Okay.
to memorize, and knowledge is something you need to memorize without the script.
no, not quite. But very good. Well done. I like it. Very good. And this is very good. We have to always be using our minds, and we have to think. Now, if you go and open your computer and you go to Google, okay, and you type anything in there, what will you get? You get so much information, isn't there? There's millions and millions of information that people, in fact, this is like an information explosion. With these years, all information is there. Information is available at a wide scale. Anything you want to know is more or less out there. Okay? But knowledge is how to use that information practically. How do you work by the information? How does that information become useful? Because if I gave you the information that there is the ant eats the same amount of food as its body weight every day, that's a piece of information, isn't it? Now, if you're not going to use that information in your life, okay, you don't know how to make use of that. It's not real practical use, but it's just information. But if you can change a piece of information into knowledge so it becomes practical for you, so that you can work on it. And that's why in Islam we have something called ilmun nafi', beneficial knowledge, something that you can work on and benefit from. And therefore you can rise, inshallah ta'ala. And does that, when we talk about knowledge, we're talking about all aspects of knowledge. Whether it's medicine, whether it's engineering, whether it's accounting, whether it's related to manufacturing, whether it's related to building, architecture. All these things are aspects of knowledge, and they're all rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you learn them, and you go and learn and you try to understand. The best types of these knowledge is that knowledge which, what?
Beneficial for others.
Beneficial and what's the first piece of advice that I told you?
Is it the acting?
Huh?
Is it the acting?
No, the first thing right at the beginning.
For the sake of Allah.
Allah, about knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because if the more the knowledge becomes useful for you, that you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is beneficial for you because it pushes you towards Allah. It means you are knowing Allah. So the best knowledge is that which makes you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why Allah said, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. Those who fear Allah from His slaves are the ulama, those who have the knowledge with regards to Allah, because the more they learn, the more it makes them closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more you learn about science, you can come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, see how great Allah is and how powerful Allah is. And the more you learn about the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, you can see how his practice was beneficial knowledge which only today scientists are learning about. How many of you brush their tongue? How many of you get a toothbrush and brush their tongue? Oh, mashallah, doing it there at an early age. Mashallah. So we've got about a few people, but the others don't brush their tongue. You should brush your tongue. Why should you brush your tongue? Because it's a?
Job.
No, before that. P is for? Prophet. Follow the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet used to brush his tongue with toothbrush. To brush his teeth and brush his tongue. To the extent, now when you go home and try brushing your tongue, what are you going to do?
Are you going?
Yes, it makes you feel sick. And that's why even in the hadith One of the Sahaba, he said, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, he said, I entered into the Prophet ﷺ and he was brushing his tongue and I could hear him say, So even in the hadith, he said, the word is there in the hadith because he was brushing his tongue. Now the Prophet ﷺ was doing that 1400 years ago. Only about 10 or 20 years maximum, the dental world is so happy that they discovered the practice of brushing your tongue. Such a good thing to do because when you brush your tongue, you get rid of all the bacteria that's on your tongue which gives you bad breath. So that's such a great thing to. For all this time, they weren't brushing their tongue because they didn't. Only science now they start to think, oh, brushing the tongue. So you see how Islam is already teaching you some basic things. And you can look at every aspect of Islam, you will find that there are great aspects there which the Prophet ﷺ was teaching. And by studying and increasing your knowledge, you will learn more about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet ﷺ. The fifth piece of advice is related to R, and R is rise and do action. Because the Muslims are not just people of talk. We like to talk a lot, okay? But we don't just talk, we have to work as well. We have to do good deeds. Okay, we have to act. No, don't just waste our time arguing and talking and things like that. We have to act. How do we do good works? How do we become better people? الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. You have to do good deeds continuously. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ encouraged everyone to do good deeds. You must continuously always think about doing good deeds. Helping your parents at home. Helping your neighbors if they need anything, picking up litter from the road. It's an act of sadaqah, charity, removing any harm. Don't throw rubbish on the road. Is it haram to throw rubbish on the road? Yes, it is. Why? Because you're putting harm on the road. You're harming others by your rubbish. The Prophet ﷺ said, before that, I was reading in the newspaper, and sorry for Yes, sorry for mentioning this here. I know it's not very nice to mention it, but I just mention it to you because I want to give you the example. In newspaper, they are designing in one of the countries, I think it's Japan or somewhere, I can't remember. They're designing a paint which they put it on the wall so that anybody who urinates on the wall, it splashes back on them. Why are they doing that? Because there are lots of people who go around urinating outside on the road.
Introduced here, Sheikh.
Is it being introduced here?
It's
In Oslo?
First, no, it's lower in one of the London borough.
Yeah, it's being introduced. Yeah.
Right.
It's a paint. Why are they doing that? Because the people do not have the shame that they have to urinate outside and urinate in front of anybody and leave that. And the Prophet, that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he said, beware of the curse of others. اجتنبوا اللاعنين. Beware of the things that will cause you curse. La'na, people will curse you, they will abuse you, they will make dua against you. They said, what is that, O Messenger of Allah? He said, the one who does these kind of things in the path of people and under the trees. But people walking, people don't want to be smelling that and seeing this harm, this najis thing, or when they sit under the tree and it's there. So this is something that is removing harm from the way. You can't be placing harm from the way because it brings about the curse of others. But when you as a Muslim, and part of your actions and part of your iman is to remove harm from the way. You see something rubbish there, you remove it, you take it, any harm, you take it from the way, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards you. That's very basic. Then people are doing other great things. One thing that I want to advise you all to do, if you can, inshallah, to do, which I think is a very good act, helping others. I'm not going to talk about all the actions of help because there's so many, there's hundreds and thousands of things to do. But as Muslims, we have to also be doing things related in our society. Now, there is a charity called Marie Curie. Who's heard of that charity? Marie Curie. Is it French? Who's heard of that charity?
It's about the cancer.
Not quite cancer, but yes.
The one she discovered, or her husband,
Yes.
uranium
Yes, yes. But what is the charity about?
for cancer.
No, it's about helping people who are terminally ill. Yeah, people who are ill, they need help and support. All right, so not necessarily cancer, but yeah, it could be cancer. So that charity now, what I advise all the Muslims to do, if you can, they are now encouraging you. If you go on their website, you can just book a 2-hour slot to help with collecting money for this charity. Okay, it's an act of goodness. Okay, you just go out, they probably give you something and you can. But what you need to do is make sure that when you do that, first of all, your intention for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also make sure that you take a picture of yourself doing a good deed of charity, and then you can put it on the social website, your website, or maybe it could be HIRA Mosque supports Marie Curie charity. And by this, you'll be showing others how Muslims are doing good deeds and being part of society. It's just 2 hours. The children can do it, the adults can do it. It's not much of your time, but it's also showing us how we are part of society and part of our actions. Rise and do good. And lastly, we have to be ready to always evaluate ourselves. E is for evaluation. Because as Muslims, we do things, as humans we do things, and sometimes we don't know whether we are doing things right or wrong. We have to always ask ourselves. We have to do muhasabah, question ourselves. Are we doing this right or not? What do you want to be when you grow up?
Police.
MashaAllah.
Footballer.
Footballer, MashaAllah.
Scientist.
MashaAllah. So you've got 3 things here, MashaAllah. Right? If everybody's got that, these people have thought about what they want to be, which is good. I'm sorry. What do you want to be when you grow up? So it's very important for everyone to know and have in their mind what they want to do. You have to plan and get ready and do things, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked us to prepare and to plan and to go forward and to evaluate what we're doing and try and change things and try always prosper us forward. And the Muslims, when they understood their Islam, they designed so many great things. And they produced so much great work because they were ready, they were focused, they did things and they achieved it. Who's heard of the book 1001 Inventions in the Muslim World? Just one person has heard of it. 2 people. Nobody else has heard of it? Huh? No, have the adults heard of it? Nobody has heard. This is very, very sad. Brother Saeed, can we buy this book please and put it here in the library?
Sure.
It's called 1001 book, 1001 Inventions in the Muslim World. And when you read this book, and in fact every parent, you should buy it for your child to take to their school and put it in the school library, if they can, if they allow you. Speak to the parents, to the schools. This book tells you all the inventions that the Muslims have done and how they have helped society to learn, and whether it's related to things like coffee was discovered by Muslims. I know that Algerians, they like a nice cup of coffee. Or whether it is related to the camera, person who discovered the concept of the camera, Ibn al-Haytham. Or what is
Algebra.
Discovered medicine.
medicine, mashallah, the blood circulation, how the heart,
They discovered algebra.
algebra, mashallah.
They discovered how to make a plane.
How, yes, Abbas ibn Farnas, he was the guy who was the first guy to fly. Okay?
How to create robots.
How to
Create robots.
create robots.
The
Yes.
clock and
Yes, mashallah, that's right. They did. In fact, you know, they did something which is really very nice. I don't think anybody's done it even now. They made like this big wudu machine. It's a wudu machine, and it's like in the shape of like an elephant with his thing. So you go there, you put your hand, it gives you just a little bit of water, and you wash your hands. Then it stops, gives you time to wash. Then it sprinkles a little bit of water, you wash your face. Stops. Then it sprinkles a little bit of water. So and then there's a place where you put your foot, and it washes your foot. Yeah. So that was about 1,000 years ago. You see how it's got the clock, so many things, 1,001 inventions, which we need to know about how Muslims, because they were dedicated. Every one of you here should be also producing something that I will be, inshallah, I will excel in this regards as well. I can, do you know it's about 70 years or 80 years ago, the person who was in charge of patents, you know what patent is? When somebody makes a discovery, they register it so that nobody can steal it. So say for example, I designed this cup, special design of a cup, nobody else has designed it before, so what I do is I go and register this cup. Copyright, patent. It's my property now. If somebody comes and makes the same one and starts selling it because they've stolen my design, I can go and take them to court and say, look, I made that. So this is called patents, alright? So any new design, you could design anything. You could design maybe a stand for the microphone, you stand something, a holder for the mobile, any kind, even bottle, it might be a special bottle design, that's a patent. Now about 70 years ago, the guy who was in charge of patents, he said, the number of patents that are there are covered. We've reached a peak where there will be no more inventions. We've reached the peak of patents. Nobody else is going to come up with anything new. Okay? They thought at that time that's it, this is the peak of science. And you can see how wrong they were. Only a few years down the line, people were designing, and we had the internet, and we had the computers, and we had all these different things. So never belittle yourself, because no matter where you are living, how small you are, you can become such a great person if you evaluate what you are doing and try to achieve a lot. So I know I've spoken for a long time, but I think in our deen we have so many elements which if we learn our Islam, if we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we have good intentions, okay, we know the shaitan who is our enemy and try to protect ourselves from the shaitan because he's always going to try to distract us. We should know our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, learn about his life, learn about his seerah, how he works, and we try to follow him and emulate him and be like him as much as we can, and then love him, because loving him is one of the things that will give you the sweetness of Iman. We need to know how to increase our knowledge, and we have to carry on learning knowledge, and not just gathering information, but we learn practical, applied knowledge. We have to be ready to rise and do good deeds and work and actions, and then we have to evaluate our work. And if we do things like this, what do we achieve? We achieve great things, inshallah ta'ala. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to benefit me and you with these summarized forms of advice. And I think every one of us has the potential to achieve a lot. But we have to be ready to understand who we are. And when you know who you are, you will unlock so many things, inshallah, in your life. Jazakumullah khair for listening. Subhanakallah hamdik. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
Thank you very much, Jazakumullah khair, Omer Hamdoon, for this inspiring lecture and insightful notes on special advice for the youngsters and for the adults as well. Inshallah, before receiving questions, I think it's time to do azan for Isha. Is it time yet?
No,
5 minutes left. Okay, inshallah, Salat al-Isha, the Isha prayer will be at 7:15. Quarter past 7. So, inshallah, before the time of azan, we can receive some questions. But please make your questions telling, to the point, and telegraphic. Just few words, and as few words as possible. Jazakumullah khair. Any questions?
What's the meaning of أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم?
Okay, Jazakallah khair. What is the meaning of أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم? أعوذ is basically seeking shelter and refuge, because when a person is under attack or is under threat, they find a place where they can protect themselves from that attack. That's the nature of isti'adah, to help, to seek. So what you are saying is, a'udhu, I'm seeking help, I'm seeking shelter and refuge and support and protection from Allah, from the shaitan, who is someone who is has been rejected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why do we say a'udhu billah? When we read Quran is a very good thing to do, isn't it? Ibadah. Why do we say a'udhu billah min shaitan rajim before we read Quran?
So the jinn can keep away from you whilst you're reading Quran.
Maybe.
So then the jinn cannot distract you from...
No, nothing to do with the jinn or shaitan. Well, it's to do with the shaitan, but not directly.
So shaitan could go away and don't distract you from reading.
No.
So shaitan could go and
Go away.
go from us and then distract us.
Yeah, so we're trying to avoid the distraction of shaitan.
Does the shaitan become liquid?
No, what's the thing is, what some of the ulama, which I think is very important for us to understand. The Quran, this is important because to understand, some of the people, remember how shaitan tries to put barriers and sometimes the shaitan will use the Quran as a source of distraction. And he might deviate you from the Quran, because some people, though, they don't understand the Quran. And so they...
Upstairs, you can text your questions to 07448 078 228. Again, I'm gonna give you the number again. 07448 078 228. A third time. 07448 078 228. You are very welcome to contribute to the discussion and to participate with the questions. Anything else? Any questions?
How would you define shaitan?
How?
Do you define shaitan?
How would you define shaitan? Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created different types of creatures. One type of creatures were created out of light, and these are the angels. One type of creatures were created out of fire, and these are called the jinn. And one type of creatures were created out of water and clay or mud, and these are the humans. So the jinn are made out of fire, and shaitan, or his name is Iblis, he was one of the good jinn, and he was very righteous, very good man, worshipping Allah, doing lots of good things. And because he was so good, he became the same level as the angels. Allah gave him a very good status with the angels. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam, He told the angels to prostrate to Adam. So a shaitan at that time, he did not prostrate. Why did he not prostrate? Yes?
Because he said that Adam was made out of water and clay, and he's made out of fire, so he's much greater than him.
Yes, well, so he thought he was better than Adam, and this is what we call arrogance, kibr. So he thought he was better. When he thought he was better, he fell into the big mistake and he disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that made him been thrown out from the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But also the shaitan, the word shaitan is sometimes used to mean any bad jinn who try to distract people from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also sometimes it's used to describe any bad humans. Okay? Sometimes you might describe a human as being a shaitan because he is quite bad and he's very destructive. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, shayateen al-insi wal-jinn. So sometimes they can be also like that. Does the shaitan have any power over you? Very good. He has no power over you. Why?
Because he's really small.
Yeah, he's small and weak and powerless. The only power that he has over you is if you give him that power. Because when he whispers to you, his waswas, he whispers to you, if you listen to him, he gets bigger. But if you say, A'udhu billahi shaitan rajim, you're reading your Quran, you're reading your adhkar, he has no power over you. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ لَهُ سُلْطَانٌ عَلَى الَّذِينَ وَمَا كَانَ لَهُ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ. He did not have any power or authority over them. In fact, he says, the shaitan says, I did not have any power over you, but the only power that I had, إِلَّا أَن دَعَوْتُكُمْ فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي. I called you and you answered.
Anything else?
Yes.
If I had a choice between helping somebody who's in need or doing the Hajj, what should I do?
Okay, Jazakallah khair, it's a good question. If he had a choice of helping someone in need or doing Hajj, what shall he do? Now we know that Hajj is an obligation, a fariḍah, to do this at least once in a lifetime. So if a person does it once in a lifetime, then that is enough for him. Now, when a person comes and has enough money, collects money, and he has the ability to do Hajj, and then he sees this opportunity or somebody presents to him and needs help and support to do that action, then helping that person is something that is a wider benefit. When you do Hajj, Hajj is a personal benefit, it's no obligation. Helping others is a bigger benefit. So if you help that person, you will be relieving from him, maybe saving him from some distress, some harm, maybe hunger or whatever, is better than doing Hajj in this scenario. But once you start to accumulate the money again, so once your money goes down, that means you can't do Hajj. So you have to start accumulating money again.
But as you know, the Islamic world is in a bad state. So there is always, say, the second year or third year, there's always somebody in need, you know. So how do you deal with this in terms of what's happening here in the world? And you have 2 million people going for Hajj, and that people starving. So where is that, can you sort of enlighten me? So if somebody's got conscience, what that person should do?
Yes. I think the problem with the world state and the world economy and also is that there's a lot of factors there, and Wallahu A'lam, the problem in the world today is due to a lot of factors which usually are related to people behaving greedy. Yani what I'm saying is, in the world there is so much wealth, that the wealth in the world is enough to feed everybody, is enough to make it. Nobody needs to be poor in the world today. But because there are people who are greedy, because there are people who try to manipulate things so that they own advantage, we have this imbalance in the world today. Now, if somebody is a type of person, obviously we have different categories of people. Some people are like the Prophet ﷺ, like the Prophet in his behavior, and like Abu Bakr, and they are ready to give everything they own. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said whenever he had some money, he would spend it right away. He wouldn't hoard the money, he wouldn't keep the money. Because he always wanted to help people, never wanted people to be in debt or anything like that. So he always helped them. Now that is a generous thing to do, and that is a righteous thing to do. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be aware of a person's intention in that regards, and therefore he will be rewarded accordingly. But if somebody also, but at the same time, the Prophet ﷺ behaving like that, Allah also allowed him, and he had the opportunity to go and do Hajj as well. So with doing good to others, and with the right intention, Allah will help you to counter that. So inshallah, you'll always have an opportunity to save some money to do Hajj, and also help people with the money that you have. But if it's a choice, then I would say help others. That little boy has a question.
What is the meaning of Iqra? Is it read or recite?
MashaAllah, what is the meaning of the word Iqra? Is it read or recite? Now, oh MashaAllah, you want to answer that?
Read.
Read. What does it mean?
It's read. It's read and recite.
MashaAllah.
Read and recite.
MashaAllah, so lots of answers there. Now linguistically, when we look at it from a language perspective, Iqra means read. Okay, so read. And the other word for recite, what's the other word for recite in Arabic? Rattil. Yes, rattil. Rattil. So what does jawwid mean? Or tajweed?
Is it like read or and like in a funny voice or something?
Funny voice.
In a nice voice.
In a nice voice. Tajweed comes from the word jawwad, that means to make it good. Make it good. So you make your voice good. So Iqra means read, but in the some context, it will mean like the boy said here, Iqra means read and recite. Because the Quran, the word Quran comes from the word Iqra, or one of the meanings of the word Quran is from Iqra, which is also to recite as well. Alright? Yes, I have a question from the sisters.
Yeah, question for the sister. Ustaz, what can we do to help children with memorizing and learning the Quran? Would you suggest that children speak about the prophets with good quality English?
Okay, the best way to learn the Quran is the way of the Sahaba. The companions, they learned the Quran in the best way. What was the way that they learned the Quran? They took a small portion of the Quran. Okay, so they would take like 10 verses in the Quran, and these 10 verses, they will learn how to read them, they will understand them, and then they will go and work by them, implement them in their lives. How can I work with these verses? Okay? And then when they've learned them, how to read them, recite them, and to also how to work with them, then they will move on to the next 10. So they will always be learning how to work and reciting the Quran. Now in the past, traditionally how the children were taught Quran, which is very important I think, is that they used to write the Quran as well. So they would have these small, like a tablet, not an iPad tablet and all that, but it's like a...
They have it in the school, small whiteboard.
Like a whiteboard or a stone tablet, and then they would write the Quran. So the teacher will get them to write those 10 verses. They will copy it, they will write it, and make sure they memorize it, so they learn how to write it as well. And once they memorize it, they can erase it and write it again. So by doing that, you can inshallah gradually build on the memorization of the Quran in an effective way. Because it's not important just to memorize the Quran without knowing how to act on the Quran and work on the Quran. As for specific books, I mean, there are lots of books out there. I can't recommend anyone specifically, but there are lots of Quran translations which are very simplified with modern English words which can be used. Okay? No, if you drink alcohol, you wait for the effect of the alcohol to go. Once the effect of the alcohol goes, then you start to pray. But drinking alcohol is a big haram. So you have to always do istighfar to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We'll have this question and then...
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. Just a quick announcement. Inshallah, after Isha prayer, there is some refreshments for the kids. I'm not sure if we can share or not. The adults can share. The management is telling me that.
What about the big kids? Anybody who's a big kid as well?
It's not for the kids, especially.
So inshallah, they are welcome to enjoy that after the Isha prayer, inshallah.
Last two questions. One here and then one there.
For example, you had a secret, like a house secret, and then your mum said not to say, and then someone in your school said, tell me one of it, and then should he say it or should he lie?
No, you shouldn't lie, but you shouldn't tell other people's secrets as well. Alright? Because part of being a good person is that when somebody tells you a secret, you don't tell anybody else about that secret. And if it is a secret and somebody sort of embarrasses you, like for example, if your mother tells you a secret, and then your father says, tell me what your mother said, it becomes a problem. What do you do in this case? But even then, if your mother has told you a secret, and then that secret, you have to respect it. So even if your father asked you to tell, you say, look father, you're my father, I love you very much, but it's a secret, it's an amana, I can't tell you. And vice versa, if your father tells you a secret, because we have to learn to protect our secrets in that regard. Okay?
You know, Allah says, whoever disbelieves is going to put those in Jahannam, like humans. But what about the jinn or shaitan? They're made out of flesh. So how? Because he's already made of fire.
So yes, the brother was saying, how will the jinn be punished by fire when they are made out of fire? Okay, now once there was 3 boys or teenagers. They went to the Imam and asked him 3 questions. I won't mention all the 3 questions because it's a little bit difficult to describe, but one of the questions they asked him was that question. They said, Imam, you know, if the jinn is made out of fire, then how can Allah punish him with fire? So the Imam said, you want my answer? He said, yes. So he slapped one of the boys. So the boys, they went and complained to the judge in the court, said, look at this Imam, he hit us, he hit one of us, and when we were just asking him a question. So the Imam said, no, I was giving them the answer. He said, how are you giving the answer? He said, yes, because I'm made out of flesh, and my slap to them hurt them. So even though they are made out of the same substance, but even then I could hurt him with my slap. So similarly, even though they are made out of fire, the fire will still hurt them. And in another narration of this story, he got some mud and threw it at them. So the same. So we don't, we have to think as well, and don't think about fire as one thing, because fire is there are different types of fire as well. So different metals, when they burn in different types of heat. So even you'll have one metal or one material with different types of heat. So each heat will beat another heat. And also there is an aspect of the fire which is the toxicity, which is a different element altogether. خلاص